The Season 3 of The Mandalorian has concluded, and it has given us many interesting sights and topics to talk about. The return of the legendary mythosaur from Mandalorian legend, the union of the Night Owl clans, and the Children of the Watch who walked the ancient way of Mandalore. But for this video, I wanted to give out my thoughts and theories concerning the final episode of the third season of The Mandalorian and the revelation of Moff Gideon's Dark Trooper clone project. From this point forward, there will be spoilers discussed about key pieces of the final episode of the third season of The Mandalorian. So if you have not watched the episode prior to clicking on this video, then I highly recommend doing so, as the episode is quite action-packed, and to me it felt like a satisfying conclusion to The Mandalorian's third season. With that being said, what was Moff Gideon's Dark Trooper clone project, and what potential power could they have gained had Din Djarin failed to put down the clones and instead inadvertently unleashed them upon the galaxy? Throughout the course of the Mandalorian storyline, it is revealed to us by the fallen scientist Dr. Pershing through the Kaminoan research he had access to during his time with the Empire of the potential in cloning a subject who inherits the best traits of one or several individuals. Something that has come to light in the first season of The Mandalorian was that Moff Gideon was attempting to create clones of himself, first on the planet of Navarro, then he continued his research on the planet of Mandalore, and through the blood and DNA of the Mandalorian apprentice Grogu, Moff Gideon had apparently succeeded in imbuing the powers of the Force onto each and every one of these clones, with the intention to mass produce an army of Force-sensitive clones, all sporting Gideon's own custom Dark Trooper suit forged from Beskar alloy, courtesy of the Mandalorian planet. What could this have meant for the galaxy had these clones been allowed to roam free? By the time of making this video, and throughout the course of the release of the Mandalorian finale, I have been replaying the Star Wars video game Jedi Knight to Jedi Outcast, and as I reach the final events of the game, I have noticed some similarities between the adversaries that I have encountered in the game, revealing a potential future of what could have been the result of Moff Gideon's project had it reached completion. A short summary to provide context for the experiments found in the archives of the Jedi Outcast game indicate that rebel mercenaries Kyle Katarn and Jan Ors come across a plot to imbue non-Force sensitives with the powers of the Force. The plot itself was orchestrated by the Dark Jedi Dasan, a fallen apprentice of Luke's Jedi Paraxium. Dasan's rage towards Luke's Jedi Order had led him to create his own dark side army, imbuing his non-Force sensitive cult followers with Force powers. Through the combination of the honed energies of Artusian crystals mined from the planet of Artus Prime and the Force nexus known as the Valley of the Jedi. Throughout the course of the game, the rebel mercenary and Jedi outcast Kyle Katarn would go on to encounter many of these artificial dark side wielders whose power was described by Kyle himself as being warped. But what made these wielders even more dangerous was the Imperial Remnant's assistance in the mining and supply of cortosis, which was a rare mineral that could block and resist lightsabers. And with the Imperial Remnant's limited resources, the mineral was able to be forged into Imperial armor, essentially creating the first generation of Force-imbued Dark Troopers, with cortosis armor sporting an Artusian crystal as the center chest piece. These troopers had proven to give a fully retrained Kyle Katarn some difficulty due to the troopers safely honing their skills and powers in the Force, along with their lightsaber-resistant armor. It would be safe to assume that these troopers would have proven devastating for the forces of the New Republic and Luke's new Jedi Order. During the final season of The Mandalorian, it is revealed to us that the secret end goal for Moff Gideon's experiments dating back to the days on Navarro was to imbue the powers of the Force onto clone creations of himself with the aid of Dr. Pershing's research in DNA splicing provided from Kaminoan records. Gideon succeeded in producing a being created from the spliced DNA of more than one host, with the clones inheriting the best traits of them all. During the course of the last two episodes, we also get a glimpse of Moff Gideon's own Dark Trooper suit, a creation forged from Beskar alloy. Now it became clear on why Moff Gideon had stationed his forces on the home planet of Mandalore. He continued to utilize and ravage the planet of its resources. This included the Mandalorian Beskar. It is my belief that with Gideon's intent to mass produce a Force-sensitive army, it is safe to assume that this army would also forge an altered version of Gideon's own Dark Trooper suit forged from Beskar. And if these clones were to survive the initial stages of their life away from the vats, they would have carried the potential to learn and adapt to the point that they would be able to safely wield the Force, thus eventually leading them to create lightsabers of their own, perhaps out of Beskar alloy as well, as Gideon would have taken full advantage of the planet's resources in this aspect. With all of this being said, I thought this was an interesting theory and topic to cover, as I found the similarities of what Moff Gideon had attempted to do with his Dark Trooper project and the events found in the Jedi Outcast video game with the dark side warriors that Jedi Master Katarn encounters, who wield the Force and who also wear lightsaber-resistant armor. It was too great to brush off as just coincidence. I thought it was a fascinating nod to some of the events that had transpired in the Jedi Outcast time period, which also mirrors The Mandalorian in terms of timeline, which has the series taking place just 6 years after the events of the Return of the Jedi, with the events of Jedi Outcast taking place 8 years after the Battle of Endor, and with creator and showrunner Jon Favreau's revelation of Grogu being away from Din for over the course of 2 years while undergoing his Jedi training with Luke during the events of the Book of Boba Fett. This would put the Mandalorian finale at exactly 8 years after the events of Endor, directly mirroring Jedi Outcast in its positioning within the Star Wars timeline. Watching this episode made me want to believe that perhaps from a lore perspective, Kyle Katarn could have been out there in the galaxy, undertaking these adventures all while we witnessed the final events of the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, in the retaking of Mandalore and the adoption of Grogu as Din's Mandalorian apprentice take fold. Though unlikely it was an intentional callback to this specific video game, it was still pretty incredible to have found these similarities between two pieces of Star Wars media, one found in the archives of what are now known as legends, and the other being our current Star Wars galaxy. If you enjoyed this video, my friends, be sure to subscribe and leave a like and let me know down in the comments what you all think of this discussion theory, and could have the Dark Troopers found in the Jedi Outcast storyline be the army that Moff Gideon was attempting to create during the final events of The Mandalorian Season 3. As always, my friends, I appreciate all of you who continue to support the channel, and those of you who are just joining in are also welcomed friends in the Force. May the Force be with you, and I will hopefully see you in the next lore video.